there's this kind of arrogance that, oh my God, this is happening to me. And part of this is attaching it all to the word my, right? Like, because my preferences have to be met or I'm not happy, right? There's nobody in the world who you can show me that is upset about something that I couldn't point to the fact that it's just a preference that wasn't being met.
Welcome back to the You Can Too podcast. On today's show, we have global keynote speaker, mental performance and leadership coach for celebrities, change makers, CEOs, and as I was just speaking about, a great role model of mine. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you, man. I'm excited to jump into your journey, and I want to jump on early on because your journey to see where you are right now, it's profound, the kind of impact that you've made, and your book talks a lot about it, of course. But single mother, you were taking antidepressants at 15, you were working at 13 with your uncle. There was a lot going on in your childhood that obviously built up the person I'm speaking to today. But what are some of those pivotal moments that kind of created the person I'm speaking to?
Yeah, man, what a good question. First of all, great to connect with you, man. Thanks for having me on the show. And I really love the energy that you're bringing to this and the intentionality. And how old are you, by the way?
20.
I was nowhere near doing what you're doing when I was 20. So you are far ahead of the curve, brother. But yeah, I definitely think that the single mother part was probably the biggest thing that shaped me more than anything. I mean, it's, your number one caregiver, and it's the one caregiver that stuck around when the other one took off. And so I think from a very young age, there's already this thing of like, not even knowing if you're enough, right? There's like, but you don't have the language for that when you're a kid. But when one half of the people who are responsible for bringing you into this world decide they don't want to be a part of any part of your life whatsoever, even though logically you know that it's not you because they never met you, the feeling is everybody else has two parents, or a lot of the people around me, and I don't have a dad. And so I never really realized how much that affected me until later on down the line. But coming in with that kind of disadvantage of, you need to prove that you're valuable enough to be loved. You need to prove your lovability. You need to earn your lovability. That's a big one that really shaped me. And it's something that up to this day, I was actually just emailing with a client right before this, and we were talking about the whole self-love journey and how, like, I'm still on it too. There's nothing that I talk about that I've mastered and never have challenges anymore. I'm a human. And so I definitely think, like, the self-love, the being able to realize that you don't have to earn love, you don't have to earn enoughness. That was a big part of the journey that kind of is a golden thread all the way throughout.
Yeah, I think of that, like, my father passed when I was 6 years old, and I didn't have any kind of no man figure really in my life whatsoever. But I
Yeah.
always thought about that of, like, I couldn't imagine, because I'm grateful that it happened when I was young, because then it didn't impact me much older throughout that journey. Because a lot of people, you lose a family member when you're 15, 17, 18, whatever it was, and it just has a much bigger impact on you. When did that become into your consciousness of how that would impact you? The self-love, just trying to prove yourself through achievement. I know tech was a big thing about part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely kind of externalized my healing through success and through, like, job promotions and getting this and getting that and doing all the traditional things that I hoped would finally make me feel enough. And spoiler alert, it never does, at least not for too long, right? It promises to make you feel like you're enough, and the promise just doesn't last. It lasts for a little while, but then it goes away. And so I think it's played into this and was really brought into my awareness, I think, really from my first coaches that I worked with. Like, when I finally started getting into personal growth, because I didn't touch anything personal growth related till I was 29. Right. So when I tell you you're way ahead of the curve, I wasn't joking. Like, literally 29 years old was the first time I picked up any kind of personal growth book. It was Think and Grow Rich. It was my very first personal growth book. Yeah. And it's like a lot of people's. And but it's so funny, man. So here's my thing. When I first picked up Think and Grow Rich, and I did this on the back end of this experience that I talk about in chapter 1 of Prison Break, of this, of the bank cutting me off, right, of taking away access to my funds, and this was all, you can read the book and kind of get the whole story, but this was all basically me making bad health decisions, food decisions, and because of those food decisions, my bank actually cut me off from having access to my own money. Right now, if you feel like that's impossible, go read the story and you'll see how those things fit together.
Great story.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And that was the turning point for me to start saying, like, okay, I need to figure out something else. There's something is not off. It's not right here. I know something's not right. There are other people that I know who have been through far worse things than I have been objectively, and they don't seem to have the same level of anxiety and depression and self-loathing and all these things that I had. And so Think and Grow Rich was the first book that I picked up once I decided I was going to try to do something about this and not just be this, as I call it, a prisoner of circumstance, a victim, being in that victim consciousness. And so I read Think and Grow Rich, and it was the most frustrating thing in the world for me to read it, because he keeps saying, like, by now you're probably picking up on the secret that I'm telling you here. And I'm like, no, what's the secret? And the secret was the role of thought in your experience of life. And it was so foreign to me, James, that my thoughts had anything to do with my experience of life. No, the guy that cut me off in traffic is why I have the experience of life. The promotion I got is why I have the experience of life. My girlfriend not understanding that I did something that it wasn't a bad thing that she thought was a bad thing. That's why I feel a certain way. So that book was really challenging for me, because it really it forced me to start looking at the fact that external circumstances, while they are a very convincing mirage of what creates our experience of life, they are just a mirage. And so that was the big one for me.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. I went through all of my life taking so much pride that I never read a book. I believed it was the best thing. My mom and my sister would always tell me, "You're going to start reading eventually. You're going to start reading eventually." I'm like, "No, I'm never reading books," because throughout high school and throughout school, you're reading books that I believe just don't have much of an impact, you know. And I think that reading, Think and Grow Rich, when I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. Same thing for me. It was like, I don't even know what this is trying to teach me, but it's definitely changing some things in my mind. I know Steven was the guy that answered the phone,
Yep.
and had a big impact, right?
Yep.
I find for many people, it's like the mindset that, change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes more painful than making a change. Everyone kind of understands that concept now. But what I want to help people through this podcast and through coaching as well, let's get ahead, so you don't have to get to that point where it's so bad you're forced to make a change. I know at that point it was kind of like you had nothing else to really place the blame on, and so you took a responsibility. But how do you help your clients, and how do you help people kind of get ahead of that curve so they don't have to wait until it's so bad that they're forced to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this all boils down for me, and this is there are three main things that I work on with clients, and it takes all kinds of different forms. But essentially, it's being able to challenge and question the identity that you think you are.
Yep.
It is being able to navigate your thinking when your thinking starts to try to derail you from the experience of life. And then it's about taking more action consistently on whatever it is you want to take action on, not because it's going to make you cool, not because it's going to make you successful, but because it's just whatever it is that you're committing to in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are kind of the three things. But that first thing, though, to answer your question, that first thing is the big part. It's the identity, right?
Yeah.
Because the identity that I think that I am will dictate my thought processes, my actions, my results, everything else. And so if I am cast in a movie as a bank robber, right?
Mm-hmm.
A bank robber in a movie does not gingerly open the door and say, "Hey guys, sorry, don't mean to disturb you. Can you please give me all your money and jewelry?" No, they kick in the door, they wave a gun in people's face, they scream and yell, tell them to get on the ground. Like, that's the identity of a bank robber. And if I'm cast in a movie as a bank robber and I forget that I was cast in a movie as a bank robber, the rest of my life outside the movie is going to be really difficult, right? If I get home and kick the door into my house and my wife and kids are there and I'm waving a gun around, this is not a good thing, right? But this is what we do every day. We get sucked up into the illusion of the identity that we think we are. And something that one of my mentors, Byron Katie, would always say, and I just always love it, is essentially that the only reason that I'm Jason is because my mom called me that enough times and I believed it, right? And that's the same thing all of us do. We're just trapped in these identities that we either were told that that's who we are, or we created that's who we are. And so that's who we are. And so that comes out in really, really small ways. I was working with a client who owns a hospital system on the East Coast of the US. And we were talking about this, and he kept saying that his team is always putting out fires. They feel like they're always putting out fires. Anytime he sits with the executive team and they want to work on doing things to grow everything and make it better for the patients, they're always putting out fires. And I told him that if you have the identity, and if your team has the identity of we always put out fires, then all you will see is opportunities to put out fires, right? And so we need to shift that consciousness to ask the question from a more empowered place, from a different identity than what we currently have. And so the exercise that I do around this, and I do this on myself, I just did it yesterday. I do it sometimes daily, sometimes several times a week, whatever it is to remind myself of that. And so if you were to look at the movie Batman, right?
Yep.
And this is something that I love sharing because it's been so powerful for me. If you imagine, James, that you are the director of the movie Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Keaton is your star, and he's like doing his own little Batman thing, and you see him doing his Batman thing, and you're filming a scene, everything looks amazing. And then you yell cut, and you're talking to your crew, you're getting ready for the next scene, and you look over and you see Batman pacing back and forth on the set, like he looks really stressed out. And he's your star. You want to make sure he's okay, right? You don't want him to flip out and have a breakdown because then the movie will never get done. So you walk up to him and you're like, "Hey man, what's going on? You look kind of stressed out." And he goes, "James, I don't know, man. I'm trying really hard, but what if my tech's not strong enough? What if I can't beat the Joker and he takes over Gotham and all the people of Gotham die and then the blood of is on my hands? And like, I don't know if I can deal with this. And you're looking at him kind of perplexed, like in your head thinking, dude, this is a movie, like chill out. It's a character you're playing, but you want to be nice. You want to be caring. And so you say, okay, Batman, there's two different things you can say here. Number one is, let's go ahead and figure out how to make your tech strong enough to beat the Joker and save the people of Gotham. That's one way you can help Batman in this situation. But the second way is to remind him that he's Michael Keaton playing the role of Batman.
Yeah.
And when he really realizes, when he really gets that before he was on set, he was in a trailer. And before he was in that trailer, putting on the costume, he was in a different trailer getting makeup. And before he was in the trailer getting makeup, he was in his car driving to the lot. And before he was in his car driving to the lot, he was at home with his family having breakfast. Like when he realizes that's who he is, and Batman was just the role that he's playing, it doesn't mean you ignore, quote, Batman's problems, but you have some distance, you have some depersonalization. And I don't know about you, man, but there are problems that I've had that my friends have had, the exact same problems. And somehow I'm really good at helping them through it and really crap at helping myself through it. That's because I have distance, right? I don't confuse their problems with my problems. And so now I can help. And the same thing happens here. When you don't confuse this identity you've created's problems with who you actually are that existed way before these problems ever existed and that you'll exist way after these problems exist, that version of you has so much more creativity available to you to help Batman with his problems. And so I wear this bracelet that says "Not Batman" to remind me of this when I get into my crap. And so I sit there and I have this exercise where I'll close my eyes and I'll say it out loud, or in my head if my girlfriend's around. I don't want to look like a weirdo, but sometimes I'll still do it out loud. And I'll say, today I'm playing the role of Jason, the stressed out entrepreneur that's mad at his team for screwing something up to the mailing list or whatever it is, right? That's a role that I know how to play. I know exactly how he thinks about himself. I know exactly what he thinks about his team. I know exactly how he lashes out. I know exactly what, how he shuts down. I know how to play that role all day, every day. So then I ask myself, how does it feel right here, right now, without an attachment to that role? Not saying the role doesn't exist. We're not ignoring that it exists. It obviously exists. What does it feel like right here, right now, without an attachment to that role? They've yelled cut. I've taken off the costume. I wiped off the makeup. I drove home to my family. How does it feel as that version of me without this role being the center of my attention? And when I do that, man, I feel a sense of peace. And when I feel that sense of peace, that's when I know that it's time to go back to Batman and help Batman with his problems.
Man, there's so much there. I've heard you speak about that, and I love that analogy so much because you're grounding yourself in where you are, not who you think you are. And I think there's a massive distinction. I think my most viral video I've ever made on Instagram was talking about that. I'll prove to you that you are not who you think you are, and it's simply because who you think you are versus who you actually are two separate people, and we identify too much with who we think we are rather than who we actually are. And we walk through life with that identity, and it's so important to be able to really take yourself out of that and be able to recognize that truth. You speak so much about that, and I love that idea as well because it's so important. I don't think people put enough prominence on that reality because belief drives behavior, behavior drives results. It goes right back into our belief, and so we have to change the way that we believe about things. Is there any other questions that you continuously ask yourself as a podcaster, coach, and just someone that you ask different questions, you get different answers? Is there any other questions that you ask yourself to bring up that awareness when you're in that kind of thought process?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the other practice that I have that's been really helpful for me is, again, when I start getting overwhelmed by the identity that I think I am, is just to ask myself, what am I making the center of my universe right now? Right. And in different language, like, what am I making the most important thing in my life right now? Because in my experience, anything that we think is the center of our world, we're going to use the majority of our energy to protect that thing from failing or from falling apart. And we see that. That's why we have a stress response. It's fine to have a stress response. It's self-preservation to have a stress response. It's okay. Like people that are just flowing in kimonos all day and they never experience stress, it's a great strain of magic mushroom, but it's not necessarily how it works in the real world, right?
Absolutely.
And so being able to ask myself, what am I making the center of my universe? And so in any given moment, it could be I'm making, making a certain amount of money this month is the center of my universe, right? Let's say it's the end of the month and I'm like, oh, we're so close to goal, but we're not going to hit it, whatever the thing is. I say to myself, okay, that's the center of my universe right now. And that's driving my beliefs, my behavior, my action. Everything is being driven by that belief, by that being the center of my universe. So for me, I want to make sure that if I'm going to make anything the center of my universe, it's only my own experience of peace and ease, right? And so what I do is I ask myself that question. I say, okay, what am I making the center of my world? And I say, okay, oh, it's this thing that I want to happen. And I say, cool. What would it feel like, again, right here, right now? It's always about getting back to the present moment. What would it feel like right here, right now, if the only thing that was the center of my universe was my own experience of peace and ease? And I sit with that, and my shoulders drop, and I feel my body start getting relaxed, and everything kind of it comes back in. Instead of being all over the place and scattered, it really gets dialed in. And so that's a big thing for me. And I remember sharing that on this women's leadership thing that I was doing a talk for. And at the end, somebody raised their hand and said, yeah, cool. So I make my peace and ease the center of my universe, and then my kids don't get fed, and my employees don't get paid, and my bills don't get paid. I'm like, well, that's one option. But the other option, at least for me, is that if I have children that I know need to be fed and they're not being fed, and I have employees that need to be paid and they're not being paid, and I have work that needs to be done and it's not being done, that outstanding stuff does not contribute to my sense of peace and ease. And so if I am centering all of my energy on my own peace and ease, then of course I want to go feed the child because that contributes to that experience. And I want to find out how to pay my employees because that contributes to my experience. And so I really think when we anchor into that and use that as our come from, right? If you're using your GPS, you got your starting address, you got your destination address. If you make your starting address peace and ease, or for you, whatever it is. For you, I've had clients before, they said, oh my God, no, peace sounds terrible to me. Okay, fine. Whatever the thing is for you, joy, or it's bliss, or it's calm, or it's creative, or whatever it is, starting from there is going to change the entire experience for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We way too often let our outer reality control our inner reality, which also lets our outer reality have more of a pull over our inner reality. It's a continuous loop which is tough to break through. And I love this idea. And again, with the prison break, the book as well, because I grew up as a victim, as most people do. I lost a lot of family growing up. There was a lot of depression, anxiety as well. And my question was always, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Got an answer. I mean, I always say that your mind's like ChatGPT. You give it a prompt, you're gonna get an answer. There was a day when I asked, how is this happening for me, where everything changed. My lens of life completely changed because I gave it a different question. And you have a lot of mantras as well that stick with you. One of them that stuck with me that I dove into is that creativity is greater than circumstance.
Yeah.
Right. What other mantras do you kind of reinforce, whether it's in the morning or just on a practice that you do?
Yeah, I have actually a document that I read every morning to myself that I've written. It takes me about 10, 12 minutes to get through it. I mean, it's a pretty long document and things keep getting added to it. By the time I'm done, it's going to be a book probably, but I believe in that because I believe in the anchoring. Creativity is greater than circumstance is a great one. The other thing I do, and this actually didn't make it in the book, but they're called prison break questions, PBQs. Yeah. So I kind of came up with this after the book. So they didn't make it in the book, but prison break questions are interesting because they're essentially what you would call an incisive question that instead of trying to solve a problem, it makes the problem less problematic, right? So if it's a problem if I've run out of gas, that problem is no longer problematic if I ran out of gas as I was pulling into a gas station. Right? That's not problematic anymore. So I didn't solve any problems because I haven't pumped the gas yet, but my belief system is different now because I've realized I've landed in a safe space for what I need. And so these questions essentially have the format of, if I knew, what would I do? Yeah. Right? If I knew, what would I do? And it's so funny. I literally just used this with a client yesterday where they were upset because there were certain practices that they've been doing for the last 6 months or so that we've been working together that have really, really worked for them, like really well, anytime they had an issue. Then something came up and they were using the tools and none of them were working. Nothing was working. They were going through the Rolodex of all the tools that they have now and none of them were working. And they were really upset and they came to the call to talk about this. And so we said, okay, are you open to creating a prison break question? They said, sure. And so the prison break question that came up in that moment was, if I knew that the tools were going to magically start working again in 10 minutes, how would I show up to life for the next 10 minutes? Right? Because the problem is my tools aren't working. But that's no longer problematic if you know they'll start working again in 10 minutes. Right? So by asking that question, he said, well, I mean, I guess I'd stop forcing the tools to try to work. And I'd probably stop beating myself up that I can't make the tools work. And he starts going through these things. And I'm like, how do you feel? He goes, oh, I feel a lot better. I'm like, but nothing changed. Nothing in your circumstantial world changed, but just this incisive question of if I knew, and there's a part of this that's really important. And that's the time horizon that we assign to things.
Yes.
If you look at the study of positive psychology, the people who are pessimists, and optimism and pessimism, they are systems of thinking. They're not woo-woo. They're not blind hope. They're real systems of thinking, ways of speaking. If you look at the people who are pessimists based on these studies, those people respond to crisis and issues in their lives thinking that whatever's going on is both permanent and pervasive, right? And so if I get fired from a job, not only is it permanent, I'm never going to find another job again, but it's also pervasive. Well, I'm not going to find a job, and then I won't make any money. And then what kind of woman would want to be with a guy who didn't have a job? And I'm going to move back in with my parents, and I'm going to have this miserable life. It's like, whoa. Like, how did we spiral out in this whole thing? But we all do it. I still do it sometimes, right? It's a part of what we do. On the flip side, the optimist side, they look at those same events as isolated and temporary, right? They don't get all Pollyanna about it. They don't try to put on rose-colored glasses. They just say, this is a real thing. And this real thing is both isolated to the thing that it affects, and it's temporary, just like everything else that I've ever faced has been temporary. And so that's kind of the other piece of this, is that like so much of the stress that we feel is because we think when we're in something, it's going to last forever, right? When we're in something that's quote negative, it's going to last forever. So PBQs are one way to say, you know what, if this wasn't going to last forever and it was time-based, how would you feel? And as we've been talking about, you change the way you feel, you're going to change the way you act in the world.
So true, man. That's so funny that you brought that up, because I was just going to prison break questions right after that. Because I
It's
have that.
awesome. Perfect.
I had the if I knew, what would I do? One that I often think about is what would have to be true for this to be a good experience? What would have to be true for whatever the insert whatever there, which is so important, because it just the questions are so powerful. And I love that the prison break question, because it breaks you out of the prison that you place yourself in, essentially. Now, talking about that, because I think part of that goes down to how serious we take things, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, if something bad were to happen to you today, but it led to something great 3 years in the future, would you still consider it bad? And usually the answer is no. And so we just have to have a longer time horizon on things. You talk about being serious versus sincere towards things. I know a lot of, especially when the call with Steven happened, and just a lot of your life, there was a lot of anger that was there. When did the pivot go from serious to more sincere through life?
Yeah, I got to attribute that to a different Steve Chandler,
Yes.
who's been my coach for years. And he's
Yep.
just been like, I mean, he's the one who really first introduced me to victim consciousness and all this stuff. And he has a great book also called Reinventing Yourself. That's all about the owner victim distinction. And he's written 40 or something books. The guy's prolific.
Yeah.
But he's really the one that I give so much of that credit to to really wake me up to see what was possible. And, yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. He's been one of the most pivotal people in my life. And he is so great. The reason he and I clicked so much in the beginning was because we both realized we were very irreverent. And we took the piss, as they say in the UK. We took the piss out of a lot of things, and we made fun, we humorized things, but we didn't trivialize them. Right? There's a difference in humorizing, bringing levity to something, versus trivializing it and making somebody feel like what they feel is wrong or bad or stupid. And so it was almost like between him and one other person that I was kind of studying at the time, I felt like I had permission to allow that part of myself to come out more, and to allow like the more playful side to come out more, and to apply that to quote problems in my life. I was great at being jokey and playful and fun when everything was jokey and playful and fun, but then I would, get really serious. I get really like, my fists are clenched and I got to get serious about this. And so when I was introduced to this distinction of sincere versus serious, which is an Alan Watts distinction, one of my favorite philosophers, that really struck me, because I don't know about you, when I hear the word serious, it is very constricting, right? People say like, you have to get serious. Yeah, you know this. Like, it's like there's never been like a fun time. It's like, hey guys, you ready to get serious? Like that just doesn't happen, right? But sincere I can get behind, because sincere to me has like a devotional property to it, right? And like, when you have a partner or you have a child and you love them, you're devoted to them. It's not a it's not a chore to love them. It's not a chore to be there for them and support them. It's just an offshoot of you being devoted. And I think that sincerity, as it relates to, work or health or whatever else, sincerity plays that same role. It's a loving devotion to whatever the thing is that's out there. Whereas serious never feels like a loving devotion. It always feels like a mandate or a finger wag or just something that's not fun. So to me, that's a major shift, man.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I think of like any kind of sport when you're being so serious about it, you're probably not going to do good because you're so tense. When you're
Yeah,
enjoying it and you're having more fun, you're more present in the experience and you cherish it. There's a whole different kind of resonance to that, and you show up differently. What kind
totally.
of? Because I know that that's definitely something that you work with clients on. I assume that you have a lot of Type A kind of clients that you work with.
Oh
I
yeah.
definitely know that mine. I don't think I've ever worked with anyone that has not been a Type A kind of person. We're always trying to achieve, 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 achieve. How do you kind of bring them out of that serious kind of mentality? Because it's so difficult, especially when like I can just think of being an entrepreneur in general.
Yeah.
You leave tech, you have all of the 6-figure job, you have the car, you have the house, you have everything you want, and then you go do something that's uncomfortable. You have to be serious, otherwise you're not going to take it serious. You're not going to show up intentionally. So how do you kind of manage the intentionality with things with also allowing yourself to make more play and more fun?
Yeah, it's really interesting, man. Like it's a challenge because again, it goes back to the identity thing and protecting the ego and all these
Yeah,
things. There's an arrogance that all of us carry around with
love
us,
that.
right?
Yeah.
All of us carry around an arrogance. Like this guy was sitting on a plane recently, and the internet went out at some point while we were flying over an ocean. The internet goes out, and the guy literally says, "I can't believe this is happening to me." There's 275 people on it. So
Yeah.
at least just on this flight, it's definitely not just happening to you. And now we're
Mhm.
not even taking into account all the other flights that may have lost internet and it's happening to them. And so there's this kind of arrogance that, oh my God, this is happening to me. And part of this is attaching it all to the word my, right?
Mhm.
Like because my preferences have to be met or I'm not happy, right? There's nobody in the world who you can show me that is upset about something that I couldn't point to the fact that it's just a preference that wasn't being met.
Yeah.
And our preferences are being met all day. Like when I turned on the shower today, my preference was that when I turn the knob, water comes out, and it did, and I said nothing. I did not say thank you. I wasn't excited that my preferences were being met. It's just like that's what's supposed to happen. And that's that arrogance that I'm talking about. And so if we were to step back and think about this in a different way, it's there's a woman called Nancy Klein. She wrote a couple. I think she's written multiple books, but two in particular. The first one is called Time to Think, and
Mhm.
then the most creative name I've ever heard for a follow up book. Her second book was called More Time to Think, which I just thought was amazing. But she has this distinction in there that I really really love, and it's about essential and irrelevant. Right,
Mm.
that those two things can exist at the same time, that we as humans are both essential and irrelevant. So, you doing this podcast right now, James, is essential. There are people that need to hear your thoughts. There are people that need to hear these conversations. And in the grand scheme, it's irrelevant, right? If you and I both died tomorrow, there's going to be people who are definitely upset for a time and they will
Mhm.
go back to their lives, right? And this is not meant to be morbid. This is not meant to make anybody think they shouldn't do what they want to do. But if we can hold that paradox, I am essential and irrelevant, then when something comes in and we start taking it seriously, I can ask myself, which one am I leaning into right now? Am I overly leaning into essential? And is
Mhm.
that the issue? What if I knew this was a little more irrelevant? And so this happened to me not too long ago too. When I did, I was doing a talk in Eastern Europe. I think it was last year, and I remembered feeling, and I always feel some like butterflies and stress before I go on stage. I love being on stage. As soon as my foot hits the floor, I'm in it. But before that anticipation anxiety, I can't stand it. So I'm in my thing right now, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting stressed out. And then it just occurred to me the ridiculousness of the fact that I was freaking out or that I was anxious to
Mhm.
literally walk up on a couple steps onto a flat surface, and I have been walking on flat surfaces for the majority of my life, not a new thing. And to get to speak to people in an audience, they may like what I have to say, they may not. It may be effective, it may not. These people may hire me again, they may not. But to have any anxiety around that before, I literally started laughing to myself, and I was like, the ridiculousness of what I am doing to myself is crazy. And so one of the things that I use as a tool for this as well, and this is probably the most powerful coaching I've ever received in my life. And I've been getting coached since 2013, I think, or 2012, I think was the first time I hired a coach. And of all those years, 11, 12 years now, the most powerful coaching I ever got in my life was, again, from Steve Chandler. This is back in probably 2014. And I sent him this long email, and it was just this long loopy email, just stressed out. Oh, Steve, I'm so stressed about this. And what if this doesn't work? And oh, these people, this person that was supposed to sign up for coaching, they decided not to do it. And now what if I don't make enough money? It was just victim all the way down. Mm-hmm. So I send it over to him. I take a big deep breath and I go, okay, he's gonna come back with some wisdom and a book to read and a YouTube video to watch and all this stuff. He writes me back, James, no lie, 10 words. He says, so much compassion for what you are putting yourself through. And in that moment, and he's kind of a cheeky bastard too. So I know he was ridiculing me just a little bit, but I could take it. I was happy he was, because that was that is our relationship. But for me to look at that and say, wow, I am literally the entire source of what I'm feeling right now. And for somebody to reflect back to me, and there was some sincerity in his words as well, that he literally had compassion for me. Wow, I feel so bad for what you are putting yourself through. And that right there really snapped me out of like, okay, I don't need to take things too seriously, because when I do, it only impacts me negatively.
Man, you're following the exact guideline of how I wanted this conversation to go. Because as soon as you said that, I was like, I already know what you're going to say. I know the exact 10 words. I know exactly how it's going to go. And
you do great research, man. I'll tell you, you prep so well, man. I really appreciate the intentionality you put into these interviews.
That means the world, man. I think of it, and I think for podcasters that don't, it hurts my soul. It's like you're getting time with this person. Give them your all. I always think of that. I can't show up to a podcast if I'm not. And that was the exact way I wanted to go with that, because I've had coaching received like that as well. Not those exact words, but when I heard you speak about that, I thought, wow, so many people need to hear that sentence in itself, because it puts everything into perspective. Because it's like the outer circumstances that we have, they can be not the best, but then the suffering that we inflict on ourselves because of the outer circumstance or the labeling of it hurts us so much more. That's what really hurts. And it is a paradox, like you said. I love that connotation that you spoke about. How has your relationship changed? I don't want to say since that conversation, of course, but I assume that your worldview kind of shifted after that. I would assume. This podcast is kindly brought to you by Magic Mind. Now, if you're anything like me, you love coffee, but you hate the jitters that it gives you in that 2 p.m. slump in the afternoon when you still have a lot of day left, but you're not able to be focused throughout that time. And this is why I love Magic Mind. I've been taking it with my morning coffee. It's a small productivity shot that I absolutely love. It's with matcha, which takes longer to release in your body. So instead of feeling slumped at 2 p.m., you actually have that intentional focus, and it reduces stress. So I take it with my morning coffee. It helps me drink less coffee, but actually feel focused and not wired throughout the day, which is so impactful, because if you're a podcaster or you're taking calls or you're just in general, you need to be focused and have that mental energy. It's been something that's really helpful for me. I've been using it for a few weeks, and I guarantee that you will like it. So if you're anything like me and you want to feel focused but not wired, you can go to magicmind.com/youcan2 for 56% off. Yes, 56% off your first subscription. And for your first one-time payment, you can get 20% off, which is insane to say the least, because they have a 100% money back guarantee with no questions asked. And instead of waiting 3 to 5 days for that money back, they'll refund you in 3 to 4 hours, because they believe in it. And I believe in it so much. So that's magicmind.com/youcan2 for up to 56% off your first subscription. And if you already use Magic Mind, you can get a discount off your next subscription payment as well. So it's magicmind.com/youcan2. Try it for a few weeks, see if you like it. I bet you that you will, and you will feel a lot more intentional with your day instead of just so wired and really just exhausted by the end of the day. Back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, it shifted, but I really think that the experience of life, especially as it relates to personal growth, is that it's a cycle of remembering and forgetting.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. And so I always tell people that, like, I've worked with a lot of coaches too, and trained like thousands of coaches on the business side of coaching. And what I say is that as coaches, we are in the PR business, but not the public relations business like most people would think. PR stands for permission and reminders. Like 90% of what you will do with somebody who's in their head is to give them permission to do what they wanted to do anyways, or to do what they think they need permission to do, even though they don't need permission, and reminders of what it is to really be human and what's really going on in this moment. So as much as it shifted my worldview in that moment, what it did was it gave me one other tool to call upon when I forget. right? And even that's a big thing, man. It's like, did you ever see people before where they would tie a little string around their finger and that's like to remind them of something? Yeah. So like, but then of course you have to remember what the reminder is, because then it's like you made this,
Right.
I'm supposed to remember something. But I kind of wish I would do that.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that would just show up magically on my hand when I was in the forgetting period, because
Mhm.
when you're in the forgetting period, and everybody listening to this, you know what it feels like to be happy and joyful. You've experienced it, whether you've
Mhm.
done it through personal growth means, or you've done it because, you know, the birth of your child, or you graduated college, or whatever the circumstances are. You know what it feels like. And so it's just that, you know, this experience of you know, understanding that sometimes you will forget,
Mhm.
and that even in the forgetting, sometimes you won't realize that you're in the period of forgetting until you get back to the remembering, and that's okay. And so as much compassion as we can develop for ourselves, then when that stuff pops up, and I have a really dear friend of mine who's a big meditation teacher and everything else, and we were having a conversation recently, and he was telling me that, you know, he had these thoughts that were popping in his head one day about suicide, about killing himself.
Wow.
But he's done so much practice that in that he could witness it and say, well, that's interesting, those thoughts are popping up. He didn't take them seriously. He witnessed they were there. He had no resistance to them. And I think that's the big thing here, is not being in resistance to your experience, right? I think it was also Alan Watts actually who said the acceptance of a negative experience is a positive experience.
Yep.
And also conversely, the rejection of a positive experience is a negative experience. So if I went to give you $10,000 and I say, is this a good or a bad thing? You go, oh, it's great. Well, that's because you said yes to it. If you had said no to it, we'd be in a whole different situation. And so if we can get into a place of saying yes to life more, right, that also can change everything. The resistance part is really what keeps us down. The resistance part is what keeps us in this down, victimized prisoner kind of mentality. And so that to me is also a major shift.
I'm loving everything that you're saying, man. There's not many people that can frame coaching in a way that is so succinct, and I love that so much, of giving people permission and reminders, because the permission
Yeah.
is exactly like the first call I have with anyone is usually not the best call that I'm going to have with someone, but it just propels us into the kind of relationship that we're going to have together. And usually it's just me giving them permission to be like, hey, like, this is a safe place. Let's be open. Allow yourself to think differently than the way that you've been thinking currently. And it's
Yeah.
so impactful. I read the Wisdom of Insecurity this year as well. So you just quoting Alan Watts. I spoke with Connor Beaton a few months ago as well, and he talks a lot about shadow work
Yeah.
and Alan Watts as well. So that's just been in my consciousness so much this year, and has changed the way that I perceive a lot of things. And you're right, it is a lot of reminders. Two ways that I kind of go about reminding things is
Yeah.
I have tattoos, like perspective on my arm, and just different
Mm.
stuff that I try to keep on me. And then I also will put reminders on my phone, because I'm right with you on that. Like, I'm not going to remember if I put something on my finger, but
Yeah.
just needing those constant reminders. It's the work is never done, is the easiest way to say it. The work is never done, and so we always need those reminders. I
Yeah.
know I know Byron Katie obviously is a big coach mentor for you, and you've
Yeah.
spoken a lot about her through the podcast that I've listened to. I'm curious, what are some of the lessons or kind of things that you've taken from working with her onto your life, because she's obviously has some of the most profound work out there.
She does, man. She's just like, it's her and Chandler are just so, her and Steve Chandler are just so
Yeah.
much alike in their ability just to, like, neither of them have a guru complex. They're not trying to look
It's tough.
smart. They don't yeah, they're just living life, and they're just trying to share their own experience. And Katie, that's people call Byron Katie for
Yeah.
short. Katie, the simplicity of her work is essentially, there's four questions you ask yourself. It's called The
Mhm.
Work. And
Yep.
anybody who wants to check it out, is literally 90% of her
Work.
stuff is free online, right? It's all
Yeah.
just, thework.com. And the
Yep.
only thing you actually can buy from her, I think, is actually going in person to see her, or like attending one of her virtual events or whatever. But the work itself, you don't need to pay for it. It's all free. And her ability to really love what is, that's her whole thing, right? Loving what is. Her first book is
Mhm.
called Loving What Is. And so loving what is, people think it's a giving up, right? Well, if I say that I love what's here, that means I'm attracting more bad stuff to me. If there's a bad thing happening and I love what is, then I'm going to attract more bad things. And it's just like, no, that's not. I'm as spiritual as the next person, but I don't believe in that particular
Yeah.
thing. Instead, loving what is becomes the launch pad to creating what's next, right? Because now you're not wasting all of your creative energy arguing with reality. And one of my favorite quotes from Katie is, she says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. right?
Yeah.
And that's the key. It's like we argue with reality. So you look at her and she goes, I mean, it's just ridiculous how good she is. And she's,
I'm with
one
you.
of her things she says is she has not met a thought that she can't love for the last 30 years. Imagine that. She has not had a thought pop in her head that she couldn't find a way to love in 30 years. If we could do that to 5% of the level that she does it, there would probably be no more wars and no
Oh,
more famine and no more, crime. Like everything would just settle. But that's a tough call. So for now, we do it ourselves, and we try our best to love what is, and loving what is too. And again, you can see this in her content. Loving what is a chance also to get out of that arrogance and to get back into the I don't know mind. We live so much in the I know mind. I know everything. I know what's going on. And we need that, right? Like I need to be able to connect the dots that the way a faucet works in my bathroom is the way that it works in a hotel room. Otherwise, every hotel room I go into, it's an entirely new experience of life. And I have to like look up on the internet how to use the water. So it's good to have like a frame of reference, but living in that mind of I know how everything works and how it's supposed to go, and I know that my way is the best way, all this very arrogant stuff, and shifting into the I don't know mind. I can't possibly know mind. How could I possibly in a million years know for sure that's the way something is? That's kind of the ethos of what she talks about, and it's freeing. When you can practice it, it's really freeing.
man, I this conversation is everything. I love everything that you just said because I think of I have a Morfati tattooed on my leg for the
Nice.
love of fate, right?
Yeah.
Exactly what you said there, and I've also have the idea for a while, and I don't want to get it to the point where I have just a bunch of words tatted on me because I'm at that point right now. But I had a conversation with a family member of getting I don't know tatted on my hand because I don't know. Too much. We get so consumed in where we are. We feel as though we know that this is going to be the detriment of the future. This is going to be final. This is everything.
Yeah.
We just have to zoom out, and I think that mindset of just zooming out on things, reminding yourself that you don't know, is one of the most impactful things and ways you can live your life. And I absolutely love that so much. I want to take a kind of a pivot of a question that I ask a lot of people. I think it brings a lot out. Is what's something that you've spent a lot of time on, whether it's mentally or physically, that I or my audience should skip entirely?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh, wow. I've never been asked that question. I've
Yeah,
probably done thousands of podcast interviews and I've never been asked this question. You win an award for that one. I love
I
that.
love it. I've heard that.
Yeah, that's really good. Um, I think maybe uh, it's kind of it's not a specific thing, but
Sure.
maybe the belief that every bit of transformation is cognitive,
Mm,
right? So always trying to work everything out with the mind. And I am overactive, type A, overthinker, fast talker, as you can see,
yeah.
fast mover, fast everything. And,
Mm,
and so I have always lived from the neck up. And part of that was being so overweight, being 300 pounds and
yeah.
hating myself. I had to disconnect from the neck down because I hated the neck down. I didn't want any reference at all to the neck down. So I lived up here, which can be great. And I love my intellectualness and I love my headiness and my cognitiveness, but it doesn't always help with what's going on. And so it's been a really purposeful practice for me to work to get back into my body, to recognize the sensations that I'm feeling. And so a lot of times what I do there is I'll sit there with my eyes closed again and say, just keep repeating to myself, sensation, not narration, sensation, not narration. And then a thought comes up, yeah, but what about this? No, sensation, not narration. Bring it back to the body. And there's so many times where I've had clients who can't work through something cognitively. And if we do that exercise first and their body is again permission, their body has permission to allow that energy to kind of move around. And we have like a little practice that we do to move the energy around. And then we go to the cognitive thing, it works 100% better because they've dealt with just the sensation piece. And a lot of times there's less to do on the cognitive side once they've done that. So yeah, relying strictly on cognitive measures to achieve transformation is something I would skip.
Yeah, that's something I've realized this year. I spoke with a lot of somatic, whether it's practitioners or people that are in somatic work this year through the podcast, and it's been something that's continued to come up again and again. That we try to solve thinking problems by thinking more.
Yeah.
You'd think that we'd be able to understand that that doesn't make much sense, but we continue to do it so much. And I think it's important for people to do somatic work. And I'm excited for next year to do a lot of somatic work because you find that we hold so much in our body, we don't give ourselves the permission to be able to release. I think so many people are living in an ambient anxiety of some sort, a low ambient anxiety, and we never are able to get rid of it because we don't address how we feel, and we're just trying to think through those problems, which
Yeah.
is a makes me sad. It stinks to think about. But there's a line from your book that I love, and I'm going to quote a few of them. But the more conscious you choose to be, the less cautious you have to be. Loved
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, man.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this comes from the kind of fear-based decision-making process,
Yeah,
right? And being somebody again who was raised by, my mother, who I love to death, but she, lots of anxiety
yeah,
and everything was like, it was kind of subconsciously taught to me that everything's trying to kill you.
yeah.
Right. And so be careful of people and be careful of cars and be careful of drugs and be careful of, like, everything is trying to kill you, right? The things that you would traditionally think, but also the things that are not traditional. Like going to the mall with your friends is trying to kill you, right? It's that kind of thing. Because I'm the center of her world. And
Yeah,
like we talked about earlier, when you make something the center of your world, you use all your energy to protect it from failing or falling apart. And so I learned very early on that cautiousness was key. Be as cautious as possible, right? Make sure you set yourself up to not be hurt, to not lose, to not have any of those things. And what I have realized through this entire journey over the last 12, 13 years, whatever it's been, I guess 14 years now, is that that's not how it works. And it's much easier for me to recognize now that when the situation she was going through was fine. That's her journey. That's what she's been
absolutely.
through. But for me to recognize that, like, I don't have to continue living that way, that's a big thing. And to be able to notice in those moments when the anxiety comes up that, this is a chance for me to bring more consciousness to that experience. And sometimes, like, consciousness is hard for people to think about because it feels like a very kind of woo woo term.
For sure.
And so I just like you to think about, like, think about boxers when they get, not like underwear, but professional boxers. When you think of boxers and they're like in a match, if they get knocked out, they're unconscious,
Right.
right? The decisions that they can make when they're unconscious are not great decisions, right? They're not any decisions at all, really, but definitely not helpful decisions.
Of
You
course.
have to be conscious to live in the world, right? And the same thing is put here. So being more conscious so you don't have to be cautious essentially says if you are more awake, alive, and aware to your experience of life, to what you actually need and want, to make sure you're not acting out of some identity that's just trying to protect itself, the more conscious you are, the less you have to worry about being overly cautious because you'll be making decisions from a more empowered place.
I wanted to bring that up because my mom is similar as well. I was the most anxious person throughout so much of my life because I took that role on,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I started. And I think there's it's a paradox here where so many people are reading books they're not doing anything with, which is a problem in itself. But I think it's so important for people to take new information and to understand that that is even a challenge that you have to really break through in itself. And I think it's so important. I love that perspective as well. Another quote, I don't know, I don't believe it was from the book, but I've heard you say it, is that the fastest way to slow down your progress is to judge the way you're progressing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, it's a big one, man. It's like, and the analogy I use for this. Well, okay, so the issue is if you're a type A,
Yep,
you want to go from idea to execution to success in 15 seconds flat,
absolutely.
right? That's just the way it is. And if you're not, if it doesn't happen that quickly, it's not because of any external factors. It's because you didn't do something you were meant to do, and now it's your fault, and it becomes like a blame game. It becomes a
Yeah.
shame game more than anything. And so so I want to be so mindful of that. And tell me what was the exact quote that I said again, because I'm curious about a particular word.
Yeah, the fastest way to slow down your progress is to judge the way you're progressing.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So it's the judgment piece in particular,
Of course.
because when the judgment comes from the small identity, this made up identity,
Ego
then
mind.
that's never going to be something productive. That's always going to be shameful and blameful and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so we want to shift out of that entirely. And so the analogy that I use for this is, when you're sitting in an airplane, a commercial airplane, and you look out the window, at least for me, it looks like we're barely moving. I mean, it
Yeah.
looks like we're going like 5 miles an hour. The horizon looks exactly the same. But if you were in a helicopter or a drone or something above the plane and filming the plane, it's going 500 miles an hour. The thing's flying. But when you're inside the thing, it's very hard to see the speed at which you're progressing,
Hmm.
right? And so either you need to take a step back and really, really mark down progress on stuff. And I mean, I mean to the nth degree. Like, this is something I'm even doing. I'm starting a new business, a supplement company now. And I've had I had something pop in my head of like, you know what? It's been 3 months since I had the idea for this. How do I not have the product to market already? And so I sat down and I started looking at it, and I need to continue the list. I started writing down all of the micro things I had done, like micro things that I just don't pay attention to at all. And then I realized, like, wow, I'm actually much further along than I thought, because I'm looking at progress as a milestone and not outcome as a milestone, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you find yourself judging your progress, just know if you think it's slow now, it's about to get slower, right? We want to really zoom out and remember the plane's going 500 miles an hour, even if we can't feel it on the inside.
Absolutely. It's hard to see the picture while you're in the frame, right? Like
100%.
And I love that perspective too. The thing that has helped me, like, even so I started this podcast in my car doing solo episodes for
No
about
way.
100 episodes.
Wow.
And so when I was in that moment, I thought I'm going to just focus on my direction, not so much the results, because that's going to allow me to show up 100, 200 over times now. And I just think about when I'm at 1,000 episodes, I'm not even thinking about the 50 or 60 that I've done. Right. And so I think it's so important for people to focus on the actions and not the achievement, because when you attach to the actions, then you're focused on just becoming better and just growing and growing. When you're focused on just attaching yourself to the achievement, you're never going to be enough, because one milestone just is the beginning of another milestone. So I love that perspective. I know from your book that your intuition is drunk is a chapter that you go back to most, but one that really stood out to me that I think will resonate with a lot of people is the upside of comparison. I think a lot of people see comparison as a thing that only will tear you down. Social media definitely makes it more difficult. But what is the upside to comparison?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll give you the upside of comparison as I think about it now, which may be a little bit different than was in the book. But, to me, the upside of comparison now is, I remember when I launched my first startup after I got out of tech consulting, and it was a transportation startup, and we were pitching to investors. We were trying to raise money for this business. We're out there trying to raise money, and there was there's a saying in the startup world especially, is the pioneers get slaughtered, right? That's what they always say. So the people who are first to market, they're the ones that have to test everything. It all falls apart. They get massacred. But then everybody else that comes behind them is like, okay, well, I saw what they did. That didn't work. So now I know kind of what to do and what not to do. And so the upside of comparison there is like, if somebody's doing something that you want to be doing, the initial thought is to say, well, someone's doing it, so I guess no use of me doing it anymore. And anytime a client says that to me, like, I really want to do this thing, but there's just so many people doing it, so I'm not going to do it. And I said, cool. When's the last time you were in a bookstore? And they said, I was, a couple of weeks ago, whatever. Cool. Did you notice that one parenting book they had in the parenting section? That one, you saw that one parenting book, right? And of course they start laughing. It's as long as there are parents and children, you'll need parenting books, right? As long as there are people that are dealing with mindset stuff, you'll need coaches or books like that. Like, whatever you point to, if it's something that you want to do, use that comparison as, cool, they have proven the market for me, right? That is a proof of concept that people want this, that people need this, and that you could be successful with it. If I can use that so it becomes a roadmap instead of a roadblock, right? That's a huge thing. And so now I can look to all these people and say, I can use them now as either cautionary tales, which you and I were talking about, earlier a bit with like vision, like looking at somebody for a frame of reference, but it can also be a cautionary tale. And then we can move forward from there. So to me, it really helps you get over the hump when you stop saying, oh, well, if they've already done it, I can't do it. You're going to do it in your own way. And the only thing that's different between anybody who's doing anything is the life experience they bring to it, the lens through which they see the world that they then put onto whatever they're building. So to me, that's the upside of comparison, is saying like, cool, this is a roadmap for what it is I want to create, and I'm going to do it in my own way. But at least I have some milestones and guideposts along the way.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to bring it up. It has such a representation of this podcast is the two is the fact that someone's already done what you want to do. So it's just reinforcing the proof that it's possible. And we get so caught up in that. But I think the thing that I always tell clients specifically is that you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world. So if someone else has done what you want to do and you think that there's not space for you, recognize that there's only one of you. As much as they may have done it, they can't bring, like you said, the experience that you've had. And I think that's so important to put into perspective. Jason, I appreciate you so much. There's one last question I ask every guest.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Ooh, what belief am I currently unlearning? Oh, yeah. So I think the belief that I'm currently unlearning, this is a really, really interesting one too. And we'll see how much it makes sense without the full context of my whole life behind it. But the understanding that I can show up in non-high energy mode in the world
Mm,
and still be valuable with that presence.
yeah.
And so I've created again an identity that says a lot of my value now comes from the way I make people feel,
Right.
right? And the way that I can hold space for them, or the way that I can support them, or the way that I can be funny, or whatever else. And I've noticed recently that sometimes it will hold me back from doing things in the world because I realize I'm just in an energetic state or space that I can't be that person, or I don't want to be that person in that moment. And
Sure.
so it makes me think, okay, well, then I can't go do that thing because I'm not going to be bringing this thing that everybody expects. And so it kind of ties back to the thing we talked about in the very beginning with self-love is to get rid of the conditional nature of being accepted or being lovable. And so that's my new one. So I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day. Is she always says my 60% is everybody else's 150%, right? So she said, what if for now, instead of 100% when you go in, why don't you try like 89%,
Mhm.
right? Just these micro changes, and it's such a thing where I think a lot of times with transformation we do think it's binary, right? We're this or we're that. Either
Yep.
we are successful, we're unsuccessful. All this crap that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to go from the belief of everybody needs me to show up with high energy or I'm not lovable to I'm going to show up like Wednesday Adams and dress and be all emo with like Bieber bangs and guy liner and see
Mhm.
if they still love me. There's a ton of middle ground in there, right? And so that's my belief to unlearn and to start practicing is showing up at less than 100% and seeing what the response is from people.
Yeah, man, I love that. It does make a lot of sense as well. When you want to leave people with 5% more joy than when you
Yeah,
found them, it's like you almost have an expectation to, I need to show up 100%. If I don't show up 100%, then they're not going to leave with what I want them to leave with. I think
yeah,
what's important to understand is that you're already enough as you are, simply as it is. And so your energy in itself, regardless if it's high, low, sideways, diagonal, it's still you. And so that's what's going to be, that's what the presence is. It's your presence, not so much the energy that you have, I think, because your energy just comes off through that way. So Jason,
yeah.
thank you so
Love
much
that.
for your time. Thank you for so much for the value. This was easily one of my favorite conversations of the year, and I absolutely
Thank
love
you, man.
what you're providing into the world. Of course, all your links will be in the show notes, but is there anywhere you'd like to direct people?
Yeah, I mean, I hang out a lot on Instagram. So if you want to check me out there, I'm the Jason Goldberg, super pretentious, I know. THE, why do I even say the? I don't have to say the. It's the Jason Goldberg
Yeah.
on Instagram. And I hang out there and post content and do all that stuff. So yeah, you can find me there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.